Glass Onion. Is it just a dumb whodunit, or is it a brilliant mystery for the modern ages? The Knives Out series is a contemporary revival of the classic murder mysteries from the early 20th century. Rian Johnson was inspired by the works of Agatha Christie and Dashiell Hammett, and it really shows when he evokes that eloquent and majestic dialogue, completely transporting you back to that time.
Just take a second and fully abbreviate this moment together.
I've got the predefinite detective in the world at my murder mystery party.
Knives Out was a huge and surprising success. The writing was razor sharp, it had a great balance of dark humour and suspense, and the cast produced a stellar ensemble performance, particularly the main character of the series. Daniel Craig plays the character of Benoit Blanc, with a perfect balance of realism and charm. And it was a gamble that could have really made him into a complete mockery and farce, but it'll probably go down as one of the most iconic detective sleuths in movie history. What made Knives Out such an impactful movie were the American social themes, and it worked because it didn't gloss over the plot, it conveyed these issues with the characters. It leaned towards a certain character who was an undocumented immigrant. The audience were immediately attached to her honesty, and even though she wasn't related to the victim, she had the best relationship with him, and being a minority isolated her from everyone else, causing a greater affinity with her struggles. Blanc is merely a helpful guide and Marta is the main character, and her adversaries are a selfish and self-centered family that are hanging on to the inheritance of a dead patriarch. They are essentially a decaying family of the rich, not able to survive on their own because they've had the luxury of having everything rewarded to them since all the money in their family was made before they were born. And what's a more universal theme than the classic rich and poor? It was really a battle of class, which played a huge role for the suspense. In Glass Onion we see similar patterns take place in regards to the characters, the setup, and once again there's a clear adversary of the wealthy and the poor. Both movies have satirized the rich and done so with a healthy dose of truth and a little sprinkle of exaggeration. Obviously the tone of these movies are supposed to be comical, so the characters themselves aren't supposed to be taken as seriously, but still contains an honest reflection on the wealthy in today's world. So Glass Onion starts by introducing the 5 possible suspects who all receive an invitation from their tech billionaire friend Miles Bron to a murder mystery party on his private Greek island. Within this sequence we get to know their occupation, their personality and political views. And the politics in Glass Onion feel a lot more on the nose. They spell it out rather than show it. And that's not just the politics, it can be the humour as well. For instance, we know that Birdie is supposed to be an extremely dim-witted character, especially when she thinks a lamp is an Alexa device. But then she just has to point it out to the audience in a way that makes the audience feel dumb.
Beautiful new structure.
This can't Shazam, it's a lamp.
What? Why tell us? It's not funny that she realises it's a lamp. If they really wanted this joke to hit, they shouldn't have put it in the background. But maybe the comedy will pick up from here. I mean, they can't possibly do worse than that.
Sus. Wait, hold on. What just happened?
Okay, it won't get any more random than that, hopefully. Benoit Blanc is invited to Miles' island, and finally, Andy, the black sheep of the Disruptors. She comes across with a femme fatale appearance to make you think that she's up to something bad, but it's quite obvious that this is a misdirect. At this point, showing a character with a piano tune and slow close-ups has become cliched to the point where she is no longer considered a suspect, but a victim. And that's exactly what she is in this movie, because she wasn't portrayed with this unlikable superior upper-class attitude. That, and she's not white. So they meet Miles Bron, who's a caricature of a certain billionaire that we all pretty much know they're making fun of, Jeff Bezos. He is a stereotype of every garage origin tech billionaire, and in this story it works. It's a satire on the rich, but if you're going to make a movie that mocks the wealthy, you have to make a point, because both you and I know that these people are egotistical narcissists who are very shallow and very vain, so what point was Glass Onion making other than that? With Knives Out, we knew Harlan's family were a bunch of selfish jerks, but the conclusion showed that their status and privilege does not give them the right to have everything handed to them. And in Glass Onion's case, I suppose you could say the same. But it would have been nice to have a change rather than constantly bash on the rich. I guess a key theme in Glass Onion was about being able to tell the truth for the sake of your own reputation. Claire, Duke, Lionel and Birdie are all puppets being controlled by Miles because, like Andy says,
every single one of you is holding on for dear life to Miles Bron's golden titties. And each of you...
Miles asks why Blanc is here since he didn't invite him, and this was the first of many twists that Glass Onion has to offer, and it's a great way of keeping the audience engaged and intrigued. Anyway, that annoying humour returns and really just gets on my nerves this time.
That's Jeremy Renner's small batch hot sauce.
That's Jared Leto's hard kombucha.
For Duke or Birdie.
Do either of you two want to do a session or what?
I'm tired of these celebrity cameos just popping up because it just takes you out the experience. We get that Miles is rich. Adding real life celebrities just comes off as lazy. Also, this guy who just served no purpose in the movie except comic relief. But if you're like me and didn't find this shtick funny, then it will leave you annoyed. So Blank instantly solves Miles' murder mystery game. Much to Miles' annoyance, he's definitely not triggered. So where does the story go from here? Well, Duke receives a notification that he claims is about his video. Duke shows it to Miles, which we do not get to see, and uses it as blackmail to get him on Alpha News. And so, Duke is killed from this, and I wonder who the killer could be. Then another shocking twist occurs. Andy is killed, except she isn't really Andy. It's her twin sister. Alright, let's see who really wrote the story here. I knew it. I mean, really? A twin? That's the most convenient plot point you could think of. And of course it will work because the other characters are complete morons. I'm not a fan of this twin storyline. It just seemed like the worst option to use for the sake of having a twist. So let's try to break this down now. Andy's death was announced as suicide, but her twin sister Helen thinks otherwise. She found in Andy's emails that she sent a message to Duke, Lionel, Claire and Birdie regarding the truth of Miles. Why did she not send this crucial piece of evidence to the police? She did not need to Google who the best detective in the world is and go to him privately. Who even does that? She's supposed to be a teacher as well. The police aren't that stupid just to rule Andy's death as suicide. Even if she did go to a private investigator, surely the great Benoit Blanc himself would know better that this evidence is clear enough to rule the death as possible murder by following the jurisdiction of the legal system, which is what he did when he received a news clipping of Harlan's death in Knives Out. Blanc prompted the police to relaunch the death of Harlan. But, having said all of this, the coroner would have seen in the post-mortem that Andy had sleeping pills in her body, which would completely contradict her suicide by carbon monoxide. And this would then provoke the police to gather any possible evidence, including the emails, which would narrow the suspects to the members of the Disruptors. But they didn't do that, so maybe the police really are just useless and Helen was right to go to Blanc. I mean, they say Andy is supposed to be the smartest out of the bunch, but at court when going up against Miles to prove that she created the plan for Alpha on the napkin, she could have easily won the case if she provided her journal as evidence, something that she had been writing in since she was 6, which would prove that her handwriting matches the napkins, but apparently she's so smart that she forgot where that napkin was.
Well, Danny kind of forgot about the iron.
And that was a major issue with Glass Onion. There were too many questionable and illogical decisions made by characters that just didn't make sense. And this cause of illogical decision making comes from the over-complexity of the plot. It's trying to reach a height that would surpass the original by raising the stakes in every possible plot thread, but at the cost of making simple mistakes. Does this movie suffer like most sequels because they're trying so hard to top the original? I don't think it suffers, but it certainly does struggle to maintain that quality because the story sets itself up on a high pedestal with a weak foundation. What worked with Knives Out is how the story worked from the bottom, building a solid foundation for the characters as immediate suspects, and the world slowly grows wider and taller as the plot reaches the climax. I think the expectation was always going to be hard to accomplish, but it's not a bad sequel by any means. I would still stand by and say that the movie's strength is the writing, but at the same time, it's also its downfall. I really don't get why Miles had invited Andy if he wanted nothing to do with her and had intentions of killing her. It's like he anticipated his identical twin to show up to the party, but it's been made very clear that he's an idiot. Okay, this is getting ridiculous now. I mean, what's going to happen next? Is Blanc going to reveal himself to be the killer now? So the motives for the suspects who aren't really suspects because it's clear as day who the killer is. We'll start with Birdie, and I'm a little confused as to why she's clinging on to Miles. Because of her stupidity, she agreed to a contract forced by Miles, where the company she was attached to produced their clothing from a sweatshop factory. So this would ruin her name and reputation, but Miles offers to pay her $30 million if she takes responsibility of the sweatshop. But why? She can easily deny the allegations because she's a famous celebrity that is still very wealthy and can probably make that kind of money on her own. So that bribe didn't really make sense. With Duke, he's basically just
me trying to resist, and I just and then I grab you by your neck again.
He's trying to boost his political career by expressing his men's rights views on the national news. He is desperate to get in because he's constantly making embarrassing faux pas to the point where he will get cancelled. So his motives were believable. For Claire, she's a politician and governor of a local state. She's running for the US Senate, so things are going good for her. Except that her campaign is financially backed by Miles. She's entirely dependent on him for her career to succeed. When Miles proposes Claire, an alternative fuel that is highly risky for investment, but because she needs Miles to keep supporting her campaign, She really has no choice but to sign the contract. And Lionel also had no choice to sign the contract. Miles was the one who gave him the opportunity to leave his job as a high school teacher and become head scientist at Miles's company, which means his career is really hanging on a knife edge if he ever gets on Miles's bad side. So only 3 out of the 4 suspects really had logical motives to usurp Andy and crown Miles as the head of the company. But it's all pointless anyway because they decide to show theoretical clips of them drugging Andy. And when you do this, then none of them are the killers. And that leaves us with one clear killer, and that suspect is in plain sight, Benoit Blanc. No, it's this guy. Who else was it going to be? What's been great about the Knives Out series is that it doesn't rely completely on the suspense of who the killer was. It's not as complicated to figure out, and I'm completely fine with that, so long as the rest of the movie kept me engaged in the execution of working out the killer's motives and the possible suspects. Otherwise the movie wouldn't be rewatchable. There are some murder mysteries where you sit through the whole story to see who the killer was and then just go, alright, well that's that then, and then never go back to rewatch it. And that's because the reveal of the killer was the only real moment of suspense in the entire movie. Knives Out and Glass Onion provides many thrilling and outrageous moments that never keep you bored. I should add that the tone that Rian Johnson is going for is not a serious one. It is very much a comedy, and that style of comedy is not one everyone will appreciate. Some will find it obnoxious and fake, and others will find it sharp and witty. I'm in the boat of the latter. It's not nearly as sharp as Knives Out, but there's plenty of smart scenes that really stand out on the rewatch. Switching in non-chronological order was a smart piece of direction. The first time you hear Duke talk about how Miles almost pancaked him, you think nothing of it. But on the rewatch you see how Miles tries to quickly deflect Duke's account on the event to hide his motives. It's a movie that keeps you engaged, but also baffled. In the end, Helen and the other guests find the courage to oppose Miles by breaking his properties. And Helen uses Claire to destroy the Mona Lisa. It's not the most grand finale, but I guess it works. It's certainly not as memorable as the climax to Knives Out. And that's the thing. Even though Glass Onion is a solid movie, with great performances and mostly good writing, it's never as smart as Knives Out. For me, the simpler the scale of the story, the more likely you are to enjoy it. And that's exactly what Knives Out is. It's set in a mansion where everything feels claustrophobic. With Glass Onion, they just didn't fully utilise the claustrophobic feel of being trapped on an island where the killer is at large. And the 20-minute backstory didn't help that case. I'm still looking forward to the next one, but I hope it tackles social issues that aren't just about the rich. And if it is, then at least do it in some more subtle way. And I know Netflix will make another Knives Out movie, and for their sake, I hope it works out, because they're running out of ideas.